of them are just going to be more memorable because they're memorable from the books themselves. You know what I mean? Because Elantris is maybe less of a read Cosmere book or loved Cosmere book. Anyway, hello everybody. For today, I'm joined by some of my friends, and in honor of it being around Halloween, when we're recording this, we are going to be tier ranking some Cosmere villains. Quick heads up that these are characters from across the Cosmere, so if you don't want to be spoiled, maybe just be aware that we might mention a couple people that maybe you wouldn't have ever considered to be villainous. On that note, some of these characters also, I feel like the question is going to be, are they a hero or are they a villain? So they maybe are not the most conventional villains, but I still want to include them because I thought it'd be fun. And then as far as the tier ranking itself goes, we're kind of debating, do we want this to be a matter of how much we hate them, how well written they are, how memorable they are? So I think it's going to be a little chaotic, which I think will be a lot of fun. And before we jump into the specific characters, just a reminder that World Hoppers is for charity, so check out our merch, as all of it goes to charity, as does the AdSense. But anyway, getting to it, I kind of want to start with the one that is considered a villain, and it's not necessarily up for a debate if they're even a villain. So I kind of think we should start with Odium, but not Taravangian Odium, just Odium, because I feel like for a long time that feels like the big bad of the series. So Roger, where would you put Odium?
Oh, I don't know. I feel like he's kind of, speaking purely as a villain, I feel like he's kind of B for me because he's not that threatening ahead of time. And I think that's where the twist makes it so memorable for me. So like OG Odium, B.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sarah, is that your thought too?
Yeah, I agree with that. Because like I'm currently rereading Stormlight right now, and just like going through it, I'm like, I feel like we don't even know that much about him really for a long time. Yeah. So it's like I don't have a feeling either way.
Right. It's too distant almost. Yeah. What do you think, Sophia?
I agree. I think it's very just kind of, he's a villain. He's there, bobbling along, doing his villainous things. Yeah.
Well, there's not that personal part of it too. Yeah, because Stormlight has a lot of personal villains, I think, which it's funny because the one that's like maybe Apocalypse, like, I don't know. That one's like all right, but Rashawn, no.
But I don't think he's bad because it's not like I feel like he's a mustache twirling villain off in the corner, because I think I had read so much Cosmere by the time I got here that I'm like, well, there's probably more to him that we just don't know. So I'm like, I give the benefit of the doubt, but I'm like, he barely spends any time on page, and the only thing that he does on page is like agree to have a like duel of champions. So it's like, okay, I mean,
I think part of it too is that the shard type villains in the Cosmere as a whole tend to feel like they're almost controlled by certain impulses of the shard that they control. So then it doesn't really feel like they have as much agency. So to your point, they don't feel like mustache twirling because they're not just like evil to be evil. They just have this compulsion to act a certain way or to act on a certain thing.
Yeah, so but his is also the most confusing, because like other ones it makes more sense when you're like fighting Ruin. You're like, okay, but like Odium, you're like, what even is that?
What even? What does that mean?
Yeah, it's a bit like having the Storms as a villain. It's like they're there. There's not really a whole lot you can do about it. It's just okay, I guess.
I feel like there's some hardcore like Stormlight person that's like, okay, let me explain why. Yeah. But Jessie, I think you're the only one who hasn't had your thought on it. Would you say B is a fair one?
I think so, because like I definitely agree. It's like he's there, and he's like the big bad at that point, kind of, but he's just kind of there, and the others really overshadow him.
Yeah.
He's a perfect benchmark for mid. So
yeah, he's just meh.
I do think though because we were talking about personal type villains as a contrast, that we might as well just get Moash out of the way now, right? I feel like there's lots of opinions, but also as far as like how much do we hate them? Are they memorable? Are they well written? I'm like S tier. I feel like all the above for me. So I think that I like how I didn't even say I don't think for Odium, but I agreed B. But with Moash, I'm like S tier. I think you kind of get where he's coming from, which I do think is a fun element to villains. Mm-hmm. And you do, I mean, there's the whole debate of like, did Moash do anything wrong? And I'm always like, yes, he did actually. But you understand, which I think makes him a more well-written and a character that you're thinking, okay, this actually feels like a real person and you can understand why they're doing what they're doing, which I like. But what are your thoughts? Sarah, what do you think?
I kind of think he's just kind of pathetic.
Like, he gets more. You're in Rhythm of War right now as you're rereading, so I feel like I get that feeling right now.
I just listened to one of his chapters and I was like, oh my god, like get over it. Like,
for real.
So I don't know, because I do agree that he's kind of interesting. And I do understand his reasons, but he is pathetic. So I would say maybe B tier.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Okay. The pathetic factor brings him down, I guess, for Sarah. You know what I think I like him too? Is because he has no reason to be as much of a thorn in their side as he is. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because he's not this shard bearer. He doesn't have, well, okay, you know what I mean. But he's not somebody who should have the ability to be this powerful and to cause this much trouble. And then he constantly does, and he hurts people that we care about. So, Roger, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know, because like speaking purely as a villain, his arc starts as like a revenge plot that you're kind of like, well, I mean, I get it, because like you've been crushed under the heel of the nobility. But then in book 4, he pivots and starts to become just more of like a used tool and just is like not strong enough to like get himself out of it. So like as a villain in and of himself, like what he does, I hate, and I hate him. But like as an actual villain, I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, I think maybe A for me.
Okay, I think that he also, to your point, and kind of tying what Sarah said in, it depends when you are interacting with him, because I feel like an Oathbringer in that amazing scene of everything kind of coming together and Kaladin freezing, and you're like, no, and it feels like slow motion. That scene, you're like, dude, I hate you. And then for reasons, even though I know we said we could talk spoilers, I still want to be careful just in case, you know, but there's also a Rhythm of War part where you're like, come on. So
yeah,
but I agree with how you summarized that. I think it is accurate to say that he has less agency, I think, as we go. Yeah.
Which then makes me put him under like other people as the better villain than him, because he's not the one doing a lot of it. He's kind of just.
That makes sense. That's a good point. You've convinced me. Although I still hate him. I think I hate other characters more though. But we'll get to that. Jesse.
I'm still kind of where you were in the beginning though. I'm there with S tier, maybe because I'm halfway through my Rhythm of War reread. And his scenes in Rhythm of War, I just have this visceral disgust for him so much that every time I read them, I'm like just that visceral, like, I hate him so much. And I agree that he doesn't have as much agency, but it's like, you made your bed and lie in it. Like, you made these decisions to get to where you currently are now being used. And like, I don't know, I would put him in S just for memorability specifically, because like he is the one that you just always, you're like, you know, people are talking, they're like, oh, well, this one, screw Moash. Like,
yeah, that's true.
It's always that reaction.
If this was a less PG chat, we'd be like, F that guy, you know?
Right.
I feel like that is the sentiment.
It's the sentiment.
Other ones you like.
I don't ever curse.
Never.
Shoshana has entered the chat, you know. Okay, Sophia, I'm pretty sure you really hate Moash. Am I wrong? I'm pretty sure.
No, you're not wrong. I do hate him. I think like the way I'm seeing these tiers in my mind is like S is like loathe, and then A is like detest. So I think I detest Moash. Like I really want to punch him in his stupid face. And then I was just thinking like, what is B to me? B is like that song that goes, I'm a bad guy. Do.
Oh yeah, the Billie Eilish song.
Yeah, Billie Eilish.
That one. Yeah.
I should have named the tiers. Loathe, test, Billie Eilish, bad guy.
Yeah, and then it's okay, you're bad, and then it's well, you're trying to be bad, but not really succeeding. So I would put Moash in A because I detest him, but I don't know that he quite gets to the same level as some of the ones that I loathe.
Okay. I am okay with him being A. I think that's a good placement. And maybe to make it even more difficult for ourselves, later we'll try to rank them within their individual tiers. Because then we'll have to maybe argue a bit about that. But Sophia, you're talking about who you loathe. So why don't you kick off the next one? Just tell us somebody you loathe. Are they present?
Oh, I mean, I assume that was Sadus.
Yeah.
Just really gets under my skin. Like,
so Sadus.
I was just so happy at one point in the series. I was just like, yes.
It's one of my favorite scenes.
Yeah, I was like, finally.
We'll put an S tier for now. I agree with that. And you know what? Seeing but it's tough. I was about to say seeing Sadus and Moash. I'm like, I mean, I do hate Sadus, but I'm like, Sadus. Yeah, you're right though, because I don't know. I think I hate both of them. Sadus is more conniving and a product of his society, and what I think makes him interesting, even though he's very close to just bordering on just being like bad guy to be bad guy. But there's a couple of factors. One is that within Alethi culture, he is sort of the ideal. So in a way, he's seen as kind of heroic based off of their society's standards. And then two, when you see flashbacks, he does have like a weird code of honor of his own in a way when it came to like Gavalar and what he saw for, not that I'm a fan of it. I think I don't agree with his code of honor, just to be clear, but I still think that he's not just bad to be bad. But I'm cool with him being S tier for sure. We'll work our way up. Jesse.
I'm pretty much there with you. I mean, him and Moash to me are just, they're so similar, and like my visceral hate for them. And I definitely agree with you, Sophia, that scene was like, yes, finally. One of my favorites. Still to this day, on reread every time. Like, I get it. I'm for it. I support it. But yeah, he does have his own weird code of ethics. He is seen as the ideal, but then he's also just back there like, you've been my friend for 40 years, still gonna try to kill you. Like,
yeah,
it's the way that he's such a like realistic villain. Like that could it does exist in our world. It just makes it worse somehow.
The like slimy politician, basically.
Exactly.
Because at first, when I was comparing him to Moash, I was like, well, Sadus is more of Dalinar's personal villain, and then Moash is more of Kaladin's. But I'm like, no, that's not true, because Sadus was the one who owned all the slaves and is the one that, like, even though it would have kept more people safe to use other means to cross the bridges, he's like, yeah, but it's faster to just throw slaves out at it. And you're like, dude, it's like corporate greed.
Right?
The whole like going for the hearts, the gem hearts and stuff. Roger, what do you think? Are you going to be the contrary opinion here? Or are you in agreement?
Oh no, I mean, that scene at the end of Way of Kings gets me every time. Like goosebumps when he backstabs everybody and just abandons them because he's a jerk. Like, no, he deserves to be up there.
Yeah. What about for you, Sarah?
I agree with S tier, because like if we're talking about how memorable a character is, he's so memorable to me because I hate him so much. And like,
even though he's not even in all of it. Like,
I know.
but still, he sticks out to you. Like, that's S tier.
Yes.
And every time he comes on page, you're like, oh.
I know.
Yeah, between him and Amaram.
Oh my God, let's not.
Do we?
I don't think we can do them back to back. I don't think my blood pressure will survive.
Sure.
The level
You know
of
what?
hate.
Let's bring in some lady villains. Let's talk about Ela and Sadas. Toril Sadas' wife. I feel like in a way she's also annoying, but she a little bit, Sophia, your categorization of like bad guy, I'm kind of like, I feel like she's trying, you know, but like she's just not as bad as her husband, you know? Like she tries though, but she's just not as good. She's like sneakily. I would put her in B because I don't think she's I still remember her and I'm like, oh yeah, geez, his wife is still there. But I don't know if I think she's, but also I'm like, okay, but do I put her next to Odium? That feels stupid. So I'm like, maybe she I don't know. I might need to be convinced, but she's certainly not. She's somewhere between. I basically would be fine with any of the bottom tiers for her, but I can firmly say she is not S or A for me. But Roger, we'll bounce around. What about for you, Ela and Sadas?
She's difficult for me because I'm like, okay, but like her motivations are kind of like because her husband was doing it and she was just backing him up. So I'm like, okay, so on her own, as her own individual villain, I don't know, maybe C? She's not terrible. Okay. She does still do some kind of annoying things, but like, she's also not that villain to me.
Don't we also not like entirely... Am I misremembering, or do we not know entirely what she was up to with certain things still? Am I crazy? I feel like they were trying to figure out and they didn't quite determine who she was in contact with and things like that. Right?
I don't remember.
I think so. I'm only halfway through my Rhythm of War reread, and I'm pretty sure I don't remember finding out 100% yet at this point in Rhythm of War.
That
so I don't
probably
think we
means
find out anything later in the book because we're way past that.
Okay. Yeah, the effects of her attempts at being villainous are perhaps not felt, which I feel like maybe that's also another column of like, do they fulfill this? She's not very successful at being bad, I guess. Sarah, what do you think?
I agree with C tier because like her with her husband, like that I think is more interesting, but her on her own is just kind of like
sexist. No, just kidding.
Internalized misogyny.
Just kidding. I get what you mean. I was really joking, I promise.
I love it. Yeah, I agree with B.
I agree though, Sarah, just to be clear, that I feel like they were kind of like an evil power couple.
Yeah.
And then she just doesn't have the same impact. It's that Alethi culture, they don't give women as many rights. She doesn't have the freedom to be as bad.
She doesn't have the freedom to be so evil.
I think she was good at making things happen for Sadas.
Yeah. I think that's accurate. She was good at handling all of the addition. I actually think he was.
Yeah, she's a good bad guy PA.
Bad guy secretary.
She's the assistant.
Anyway, Sophia, are you
to the villain?
Yeah. That's what I was thinking too.
Sorry. Yeah, I agree.
Less memorable than that, though.
When she's on page, I really find her annoying, but then I just immediately forget about her.
That's fair.
Yeah.
C for me as well.
We've been doing a lot of Stormlight characters. Do we want to continue with Stormlight and then move to different Cosmere worlds, or do we want to bounce around?
We can bounce around, make it
we can bounce.
chaos.
Bounce around.
Okay.
We're here for the chaos.
How about we look at a Mistborn villain? And let's start with like an actual villain. How about we do Straff Venture? I'm not gonna lie. I want to put Straff Venture in S tier. I hate Straff Venture so much, but I would also be open to A. But weirdly, I think I hate Straff Venture this is a horrible thing to say, but I think I hate him more than the Lord Ruler. You know, I'm like, a lot of people
Absolutely.
oppressed. The other one was like so
100%.
gross. As far as memorable, I'm like, I mean, the Lord Ruler, he had his systems and he was flawed for sure, but I don't know. I'm like, I hate Straff Venture. So the hate factor for me, I think, puts him S or top of A. I really don't like Straff. But Roger, what are your thoughts on Straff Venture?
I don't have a super strong memory of him, even though I've read Mistborn twice. So
here, I'll give you a few things. He
he's the dad of Ellen, right?
Yeah, he beat his son, and he also like basically forced Ellen to do all sorts of things when he was young. And when Vin enters the like camp at one point, when Vin leaves, he has a slave who looks like Vin so that he can assault that slave and like pretend like he's assaulting Vin. He's
a very Dune. He's a very Dune coded villain.
Very gross. I hate him so much. And he is very successful at what he does too. But
because he's the one who brings like armies against them, right? Later on.
He has his in Well of Ascension, he has an army, and then obnoxiously Jasis has an army, and then it just turns, and then Set enters the picture, and then there's 3 armies. But Straff's is like the main one for a while until the Koloss, and then you're like, oh shoot, there's Koloss. But yeah, Straff Venture does indeed.
I guess maybe I'd say A for me, since I don't have the same visceral level of hatred as you guys, but like I do. There is some memory tingling back there of not liking him.
Sophia, we'll go to you. What do you think?
One of the most vile, reprehensible, horrendous individuals in the Cosmere, if you ask me. It's 100% an S tier for me.
Okay. It'd be funny if you said all that and you're like, B.
He's a bad guy.
Yeah.
It's gonna be stuck in my head all day now.
I'm sorry.
Jesse, what do you think?
I'm gonna go with S tier, and I think a lot of it though is also because of my stance as a parent to children. Anyone that treats their children like that gets that visceral reaction out of me. So like it goes back to like, like personal feelings on this. Like, I have kids. How could you like
just... And the fact that he treats Zane the way he does. I forgot to put Zane in this list. Whoops. But also I feel like Zane, that just doesn't that capture Zane so well? Like I forgot when I was thinking.
Yes,
like, I remembered. I
forgot about him too
before I remembered Zane. That's his name, right? I love Mistborn.
Yeah.
I've read it many a time at this point, and I'm always like, oh yeah, I forgot about this character. But he treats Zane terribly as well. So to your point,
I'd be interested if you'd find any fan art of Zane.
There might be some, but I think it's not. It's not like the
good.
Oh no, I wasn't gonna say.
Oh
no,
it's not good. There's not a lot.
Like it's not probably commissioned artwork.
Oh.
Sarah, what do you think?
Well, I didn't remember who this was until you started talking about him.
Thank God. At least I'm not alone, Sarah.
I do. I love Well of Ascension, so that it doesn't, it sticks in my head a lot, I think.
It's been like maybe 6 years, I think, since I read Mistborn, the first era. So like, it's foggy. But listening to you talk about him and what he's done, I don't like that. So
I don't approve. So what I think is kind of funny is, how there's the whole, it's almost election time in America. And you know how they say that a lot of it, people just vote based off of name recognition? I feel like that's sort of what's happened. Like, I remember the name Straff. I don't know, like, specific policies, but I just know I don't like him. American politics for you. Just kidding.
Yeah, that's about right.
Should we let's see. Let's do another Mistborn character. Let's do the Lord Ruler. I think the Lord Ruler is more interesting than Odium for sure. And I think especially on reread. So I'm wondering if maybe Odium will be more interesting on reread. But the Lord Ruler to me was somebody who they weren't a very good person to start. And then they really messed up. And then I feel like they kind of tried to fix things. And they didn't do the best of jobs. But again, they're not like just totally evil to be evil, even though that's the impression you get initially. So I kind of like that the more you read, the more you learn a little bit about them. And your view of them shifts. I don't know if I should say it changes entirely, but it shifts. So I don't know. I feel like I mean, they're certainly memorable, but they're also, it's interesting because they're really only in the first book and hardly at all. But the effects of their actions and their rule is very prominent. And then you feel them throughout the rest of the trilogy in a sense, like that part in the Well of Ascension when someone asks Sazed, like, when's the Lord Ruler going to come back and save us? And you're like, oh my gosh, they worked so hard to get rid of this. And then now people want them back. So I don't know. I feel like there are almost more of like the lore of them. The idea of them is more of a thing to latch onto than them themselves. And they do maintain a level of mystery. So I don't know. I feel like maybe ahead of Odium, but I don't know if I hate them and want them in A tier like I hate some of the others. Even though I feel bad saying that because of the fact that it's a very oppressive society. I think you all know what I mean. Sarah, I'll let you start for this.
I agree that he feels very mysterious, like especially like at the beginning of Mistborn. It's like one of the things that's so interesting about it, I think, is like the mystery behind him. But you don't really see him that often. So I don't know. I agree with the head of Odium, but I don't think any higher than that.
Okay. What do you think, Roger?
I think that's fair. I mean, there's not a whole lot to say about him because he's not there very much. Like, and he's not that nuanced until later, but then that's more you find out about his history and like how the world came to be, more so than like him himself.
Yeah. What do you think, Jesse?
So I'm gonna be contrary on this. I like Reshek, but I'm having see my name. That's where I got my pun name. I like him, but the problem is he's one of my favorite villains. But not in the fact that he's like a memorable evil villain, in the fact that it's almost a tragic attempt to be a hero.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
It's like he's a little past morally gray.
Yeah.
But the more you learn about his motivations, I'm like, he's always been just one of my favorite villains. So if we're going on like favorite memorable, to me, he's an S. But if we're going on like evilness, maybe a B or a C. Because it's like his intentions were kind of like to keep Ruin back. Like, yes, he had all his hatred and he did some really terrible things with his oppressive society, but like in his head he's like, okay, well, this is how I save the world, not destroy it. And you're like just so back and forth with like the difference of his motivations and his backstory and like how he ends up as the villain.
Right.
So I don't know where I would rank him, but like
but you don't have you don't have hatred for him, though. Interestingly,
no,
is the
I have pity for him. I have like he could have like
fascination.
Yeah, it's that what could have been if he would have been a better person trying to save the world and not done what he did. But it's like you get his motivations, and that's my favorite thing in a villain. So like to me, he's more of like a villainous tragic hero or something like. So like memorableness for me, he would be an S, but not evilness. But like I don't feel like he deserves to be up there with like Sadus.
Right.
Also.
Well, I don't mind putting, I think we'll see, Sophia, we'll see what Sophia's thoughts are. We'll try to kind of sort of do an average, but I would be okay with like maybe lower end of A tier because I agree with a lot of what you're saying.
He might kind of be Billie Eilish, you know.
Sophia, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with what everybody said already. I think he's created this like really terrible society, but I feel like the people who take advantage of that society to treat others really badly are worse than him because they have the power to do something about it and they don't. So yeah, I'd probably put him top of B, bottom of A.
Okay. Maybe as we go through some of the others, that will kind of help us readjust, but we'll go ahead and lock him in for now right here, and then we'll revisit. Let's go to some Elantris villains. I don't think this is going to be anybody's top, but okay, there's kind of like two villains, and we'll start with Hrathen, which this is an interesting character in that in a way they're almost like a tragic hero, but they're also sort of an antagonist to Serene, or however anybody pronounces her name, because that's pronunciations are always up in the air. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like Hrathen, interestingly to me, is more memorable than the person who, in the end, does a lot more harm. And they're trying, but they're extremely misguided in a lot of their actions. But I don't know. I'm like, I'm looking at like, I don't know if I think they're like by the Lord Ruler, but I might put them above Ela and Sadas, though. Sophia, we'll start with you. Where do you think that Hrathen goes?
I would actually put Hrathen probably in D, only because I think he would be higher before we see him in Elantris. Like everything he's done in his past that happens off page would probably put him much higher than that. But I think that he's trying to be bad. But I don't know that it's necessarily working. I don't know.
So he's failing at being a villain.
Well, I think he doesn't know if he wants to be a villain. He knows that he's supposed to be. But I don't know that he actually wants to be. And then it just doesn't play out. And then obviously the ending happens and you're like, yeah, so that was a bit of a fail on the villainy, really, wasn't it? So that's why I tentatively I think a D, but I'm very willing to be persuaded because I feel very conflicted about Hrathen.
Yeah, I'm okay with D. I mean, I know I was just saying maybe above Ela, but also I think that's because I feel like Hrathen has more of he's more prominently villainous within Elantris' story. But also I agree that he's not very good at it, you know? Jesse, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of between, I guess, like D and C for him. Because again, it's like, he's a villain, but like, he does have that redemption arc kind of. And you're like, he's just kind of there. And like you said, like, he doesn't know if he really wants to be a villain. He's just kind of...
He's very confused.
Yeah, he's confused.
Misguided.
Like, I like him as a character.
Yeah. I also am like, I like how he thinks he loves Serene. And you're like, what?
Right, like, where'd that come from?
It's so out of left field where you're like, okay.
You're like,
Sure.
Just never spoken to a woman, I guess. I don't know. Is that what this feeling is? Roger, what do you think?
I think D. I mean, he's more creepy dude than villain.
Just summarize.
Yeah.
Our new categorization. Sarah, what do you think?
I don't remember anything about him. Other than that I think I liked him when I read Elantris.
I'll give another quick little reminder that he is the one that's like, what if we make everybody hate the Elantrians? And so it is kind of a problem for Raoden, because Raoden's like over here like, well, let's try to get some like food and stuff and let's give people hope. And then he's like, what if we like blame everything on them? So it's like, he's not great in that regard, you know. You're like, that's not the best approach, you know, convincing people to hate entire groups and dehumanize them. Not my favorite, but again, he's not very successful at it. So do we want to do the other Elantris? I actually feel like the other Elantris villain to me is more D tier because they're like, they're annoying and they're like even annoying to Hrathen, but I'm also like, yeah, but I don't even remember. Like I went to write their name because I have all their names right here. and I just accidentally wrote the character Denth twice. I didn't even write this character's name. I was like, I even looked it up, and it's still. Let me see. Hold on. What is the villain's name in Elantris? It's probably gonna bring up Hrathen. Let's see. Dilaf. That's his name. Okay.
Oh,
It even sounds like some kind of like dinner dish. He doesn't even have a.
Well, it's because it sounds like pilaf.
It sounds like pilaf.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like he is for sure for me a D tier. And
Yeah.
if other people disagree, that's okay. I mean, he's like, again, he's annoying even to Hrathen, you know, like Hrathen's like, can you not? Like, I'm trying to do my thing here. And he's like, but also I'm really good at riling people up. And he's like, ugh. So that's where I would place him. Sarah, what do you think? If you didn't remember Hrathen, I'd be surprised if you remembered. He's like, turns out, okay, I will say, I think this is a little bit, not that I'm like a pro or anything, but I feel like this is a little bit some of Sanderson's early writing showing through, because he like turns out to kind of be the bad guy, and there's a lot of reveals at the end about there being like this other group. Like, didn't his wife die? And there's like all these, you're like, oh, okay. Yeah. And yeah, there's all these reveals that you're like, this all came out.
He took his wife to Elantris to have them heal her, and it didn't happen. And so now he has this like vendetta against the Elantrians. Plus, he's higher in the church than Hrathen is, so technically he's like Hrathen's boss.
Is he?
Is he? I thought he was like an acolyte.
I thought
he's
he was
like second to Wern.
I remember him being like an assistant. I really probably need to reread a lot.
Well, he was. So he was acting as though he was lower. So Hrathen took him on as, I can't remember the term for it, but essentially as his like second. But then it turns out that he was actually trained at this really bad monastery, and he's second only to Wern, so he's much higher.
That's right. I forgot that he was like.
There's some reveals about almost like, I don't want to call it another magic system, but another way to utilize at the end. And isn't it have to do with almost like tattoos, like markings and stuff? So he gets kind of beast mode at the end.
Yeah.
But
and that's because he was at that monastery. Yeah.
Yeah. But see, I feel like Sarah, you're like, I don't remember any of this.
It's coming back.
So are any of us objecting to him being in the bottom tier, though? We'll just maybe do that.
I'd put him ahead of Hrathen, though.
Yeah, same.
What?
But Hrathen is
an actual villain. He's an actual
villain. I'll give him that. He's more actual villain. If we're ranking on evil villainous, then ahead of Hrathen. But if we're ranking on memorability,
but he's also a way more successful villain than Hrathen.
Oh, right. Definitely.
I mean,
but he's way less memorable. We're all like, wait, what was his name?
Well, he
he's almost on the same level of Eli. I don't think he's D. I kind of put him as C with Eli personally. But
dang.
Remember her name.
Okay, wait. So we have Roger and Sophia are saying ahead of Hrathen, and then Jesse and me are saying behind Hrathen. So Sarah,
you've got to decide.
Sarah's like, what was his name again?
Sarah, rank the character you can't remember.
I have no thoughts.
Cop out. All right.
Sean, Sean.
I object.
Where's our moderator?
Like D for D-Loft, but whatever.
We're letting him stay in D tier, but like he's more of a villain than Hrathen. You cannot convince me that Hrathen was more villainous.
Hrathen didn't kill anyone. D-Loft did.
Okay, but
he also doesn't turn into a crazy spike monster. Like
I know, but Ela is ahead of them. So I'm like, she's also anyway, it's fine.
Maybe Ela needs to move. I don't know.
Well, she's
All
almost
right,
getting
let's-
lifted because Sadeas is so bad that she
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of is riding on
right,
his
she's-
coattails
yeah, she's
in
been
everything that she does in
elevated.
life.
She's elevated by association to Sadeas.
Okay, I want to have a fun debate now, and it's in honor also of my current pun name. Kelsier, a lot of people say, well, there's a couple of elements, and especially I want to give spoiler warning here, even though I gave it at the beginning. So obviously Kelsier to a lot of people is the hero of the Mistborn, the first book in Mistborn. And then you sort of also, though, you see him being pretty violent towards a lot of people, and you're like, and a lot of people compare him actually to Moash and his motivations, because he kills without remorse pretty much. If you're a noble, then he doesn't care. So you're like, well, I mean, that is a lot of what Moash does. It's just Kelsier is kind of more powerful and successful at that. But then
And charismatic.
now, yes, and also that makes him potentially more successful at leading people. But he had a good, him standing up to this oppressive society is ultimately, I think a lot of people would agree that's a good thing. It'd be weird if somebody's like, no. But then you see him, clinging, and then we're looking at, seems like maybe he's going to be a villain in the long run, though, because he definitely is causing problems within Stormlight. So I think he has the potential to be maybe one of the most interesting villains overall. But I think if we just look at the evidence we have, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I certainly don't think he belongs in S or A. But I think it's one of those characters that, looking at it from a different lens, he could have, if you had another perspective in Mistborn who was like a really sweet person, and then Kelsier just came like barreling through and killed their whole family because they happen to be noble, you'd be like, wow, that guy sucks. So he's like a villain depending on who you're asking, and I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that. So certainly not S or A. He has good intentions, but I don't know. I feel like it just depends. So Sophia, I feel like you might have some thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think we have to kind of see how it's going to go for him, and like what I'm thinking of as like the back end of the Cosmere, which is where we're getting into now. Because I think, as you say, if you look at the Final Empire, he wouldn't automatically come up on a villain list unless you're one of the nobles. But then he's definitely engaging in some shady dealings from the more recent books. So it's really tricky. I feel like he has the potential to be on that kind of the same level as Odium and the Lord Ruler, of being this like looming threat in the background that we don't necessarily assign things to him, but actually maybe he is behind it. I don't know. He's tricky. Kelsier is tricky.
Roger, what do you think?
I mean, I've never loved him as much as everybody else. But we just don't know what he's been doing. Like, he's been kind of lurking in the background of Mistborn Era 2. He's been lurking little drips, hints that he's on Roshar or somewhere tangential. Like, we just don't know what he's doing. So I think maybe for now, C, because he definitely does some stuff that's not great. Like, even in the terms of trying to be a hero or whatever, he's kind of on almost on Reshek's level. But I mean, he hasn't like doomed a whole planet. Oops. Because I put it too close to the sun, my bad. But like, he's also not that heroic to me. Like, I don't know. I just don't love Kelsier the same way other people do. So I'm ready to be like, sure, go full villain mode, my friend. Like,
would you, within C, would you put him ahead or behind Ela? He's more
probably behind because he's not like an active villain right now.
Yeah,
it's more like
I like how we have him ahead of Elantris's actual villain.
Well, because the potential for him to be like super pivotal, I see it. So I think it's more for like his potential wrongdoings more than what he has done so far.
We'll put him here for now. Sarah, what do you think?
I like him there because as of right now where we're at, I don't really see him necessarily as a villain, but I do think the potential is there, and he could be super interesting, I think, if he really went down that path.
I agree.
I know I was gonna love it if Brandon writes a secret, what is his Secret of Mistborn Part 2 or whatever, since that's your favorite book in the whole Cosmere.
Look, okay, I have to, because this is a spoiler, like we can talk spoilers. I hate that reunion scene of being like, oh, Kelsier, when Vin walks in, and then Ellen walks in, and he's just like, and all grumpy at Ellen, and I'm like, what is this? After you gave me that devastation at the end of the Hero of Ages to be like, hi, I'm just like, no, stop, I hate this. I like it doesn't matter. I don't need to go off, but Roger knew exactly what would get me. Just mentioning Secret History. I hate it. I know everybody loves it. I hate that stupid scene so much. It feels like fan fiction. I don't like it. Anyway, Jesse, what are your thoughts?
I think he has S tier potential, but he's not there. Like if
we
it goes,
see a lot more of him because he's only been in like one book.
But the memorability of it, like when they had that reveal in Stormlight, and you're like, oh, okay.
But see, I didn't get it. Somebody had to tell me. So like,
that's like one of the few ones that I actually got because I never get them.
They talk about his scars. I think that's kind of what really clued a lot of people in. But it's very easy. There's a lot going on.
I think they drop his name at some point, though, don't they? Or is that in Era 2?
Era 2,
I'm pretty sure he gets name dropped and shows up. Yeah. In Era 2.
He shows up at the very end talking. Doesn't he talk to
He has a whole scene with yeah.
And he's like, basically, what's going on with you? You seem a little lost. And Sazed's like, I don't know. And then you're just like, what?
You have this feeling that he's going to like try to off Sazed. At least that's the vibes I got. That he's like, sorry, friend.
Oh, I just got the vibe that Sazed is not totally in control anymore.
Yeah.
Sort of,
I got vibes that he's going to be like, you're not in control. We're going to take care of this for you.
I didn't even want to entertain the idea of Sazed becoming a villain because I could have put that in here too. And I'm like, no.
Negative. He's my favorite Cosmere character ever.
I love him. Anyway, let's get back to some hatred, okay? We need to be upset.
Yeah, we need to fill that A gap.
Let's talk about Amaram, shall we? I hate Amaram.
The hate is real.
I hate Amaram so much. And I think what's especially frustrating is he thinks that he's doing good. Except for he's it's not even like, as Roger put it, the Lord Ruler was like, oopsies, I actually moved the planet too much and trying to course correct. He just like genuinely is like, well, sometimes you gotta like kill innocent people for the greater good. And you're just like, you really didn't have to, though. You know, this really wasn't one of those situations where you're like, oh, well, I totally understand the situation he was put in. Like, it wasn't a direct, like, okay, if let this, I don't know. I'm not even going to try to come up with a scenario. I could, but I don't want to because it sounds dark. But I just feel like I'm like, you really didn't have to kill Kaladin's friends and then sell him into slavery. You didn't have to do it. Right. The idea that he thinks he had to, I feel like especially makes him, among other things, he was obviously really gross with Yasna. And he thinks he's owed her and all these. He's just gross. I hate him. But I don't know. I'm like, is he S or A tier? I really hate Amaram a lot. But I'll let all of you speak on this. Sarah, I'll let you kick off the Amaram hatred.
I also hate him. And it's particularly frustrating that like Dalinar goes so long believing that he's still like a good person and like even though you know that he's not. So I put him in A, I think, because I don't think he quite reaches S tier, but I definitely don't like him.
I might actually put him ahead of Moash in that I think you can kind of see other people might disagree, but I think you can kind of understand Moash's reasons for why he does what he does. Because you're like, well, the system and the flippancy of the nobility basically in this world is leading to the deaths of innocent people. And I can understand why you'd be like, we need to burn it all to the ground, basically. But Amaram's just kind of he's bad. And he's, I think, convinced that his selfishness is justified. And I understand that surface level, you could say that about Moash as well, but I'm like, I feel like Amaram, what we described earlier about Moash becomes somebody that's controlled by others. I just kind of feel like Amaram's just always had agency over his bad acts. What do you think, Roger?
Oh, I hate Amaram, so I'm fine anywhere A or S. He needs. I hate him, so I hate him more than Moash.
Okay. What do you think, Jesse? Because you hate Moash.
I really hate Moash. They're like, it's so hard to rank the two of them because I really do hate Moash. But Amaram, like you said, you kind of convinced me, like, yeah, he did not have to do everything that he did. Moash, I guess I can see
his motivations are just because he's entitled. He's like, I'm in the position, I have to do this. And then Moash, at least you can kind of have some sympathy. You're like, okay, well, like, I mean, your family did get crushed underneath this, and like,
right.
I guess Amaram has none of that. Amaram's
like,
just you want to name me the Knight Radiant? Sure. Like,
let me be. Yeah, no, I guess he can go above Moash. It makes more sense if we're talking like villainous wise, because like both of them just die in a fire. But just go away. We just want to see them gone. But yeah, he can go above
what
Moash.
Do you think?
I think he's like the perfect example of what I was talking about with the Lord Ruler. Like, he is in a system that oppresses people and he's taking full advantage of it.
Yeah.
And he's doing it on purpose, like, because like you say, there's absolutely no reason that he needed to take any of those steps. He did it because he wanted to and because it served him. So yeah, 100% agree. But he is as aggravating as Moash, but at least Moash has a little bit of a reason, whereas Amaram's just a dick for the sake of being a dick. Basically.
I think he thinks he has noble reasons, and that is aggravating. I don't know if he.
I think he gives the impression, but I think he probably is fully aware that he's being a complete ass.
I think he just doesn't care. I think he just wants power and doesn't mind hiding behind this veneer of like, everybody wants to think I'm so honorable. I'll protect that reputation, but like, I don't care.
Yeah. If it didn't serve him to be honorable, then he wouldn't bother. But it does.
I want to do a character that I think is the ultimate definition of sort of like on a personal level they feel villainous, but they're not actually some big evil person, and they have really sad reasons for what they do, and that would be Shallan's father, who I think his name is Lin Davar.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I mean, any child who's experienced abuse at the hands of their caretakers, basically, I feel like there is a level of that's the villain in their life, and you see him hurting his kids. He speaks very terribly to them, but also I think he had extreme trauma when Shallan was very young, which is obviously discoveries throughout the Stormlight archive. But he also is a character that, as a result of that, it doesn't justify what he does to his kids or how he treats them, but you also are like, I mean, I don't want to say I get it. It's more of like I recognize where the origin of that was. So I feel like for that reason, he's very compelling, and I kind of want to put him in B tier. But I also, like, I don't think he's like evil to be evil, and I also don't think he's trying to be evil, but he's bad at it. You know what I mean? So that's my thoughts on that character. Sophia, what do you think?
I think it's really difficult, isn't it, to compare that kind of evil to the other big bad kind of evils that we've been talking about. Like, I suppose what he does to his family is not dissimilar to what Amaram does just to everybody who comes within his vicinity if they're not useful to him.
Yeah.
So which is worse? Like, is it worse to hurt the people that you're supposed to care? That's tricky. I don't know where to put that.
He's kind of responsible for the women who do come into that house. Doesn't he even beat them? Right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think at least one of them even dies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or at least
he does it for a while
injured.
as like a proxy for not hurting Shallan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think also it's one of those things where if somehow Shallan's family story was its own book, he would be the ultimate villain in it. You know what I mean? It's just like we're talking about when you're comparing it to apocalyptic like motivations. It's not obviously the same, but as from a writing standpoint and a personal level, it's like he's sort of like Shallan. What he is to Shallan is kind of like in a way like Rishon to Kaladin, except for one of them is more of just a kind of taking advantage of a system, sort of like you were talking about, Sophia, whereas he's just sort of in a position where he can continuously do this and no one's there to save them. You know what I mean? Like no one's there to save those kids.
Yeah.
That's why I feel like he's really well written. And you don't even really see him necessarily. Obviously in her backstory flashback chapters you do, but he's not like a prominent character. So that's why I'm like, he's memorable enough though that I would want to put him in B tier. Maybe not ahead of Lord Ruler and Odium because that feels weird. But I'll put him there for now and then let's see what, you know, everybody has to say. So Jesse, what do you think? I mean, you were talking about before the person.
I think he's kind of there with Straff Venture for me though, because like you said, he a lot of similarities in the way he treats his own family and children, and he is his children's villain origin story basically.
Yeah,
if you kind of think about it that way, like he is the villain that makes his kids kind of like that could be their villain origin story. Like
that's true. I think I wouldn't put him on the same level of. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sophia.
Quite as bad as Straff Venture for me, and not quite as memorable. Maybe because he didn't like also do other things the way that
bring an
Straff
army.
Venture did. Yeah, like he didn't do he didn't do any extra. But I'm good with him being in B because I really dislike him a lot.
Sophia, you were gonna add something to that?
Yeah, I was just gonna say like all of his children have quite significant issues of their own, and he's like a big part of the reason for that, if not the only reason for that.
Yeah, I was gonna say a difference between him and Straff, additionally, besides the army thing, is that I think Straff couldn't care less about his kids. He sees his own children as extensions of his power, whereas I think Lin Davar is somebody who I don't ultimately think he wants to hurt his kids at the end of the day. I mean, he does, of course. But I think I don't think he looks at them as just a thing to use. Because I think that's a big part of Stormlight is them being like, I've heard of sons. That's a quote from one of the characters. I'm going to paraphrase, but like, I've heard of sons rebelling against their fathers. I've never heard of fathers rebelling against their sons. I think that is part of why I think Straff maintains his evilness over Lin Davar for sure. But Roger, what do you think?
I think I'm fine with where he is at.
Nice. A man of so few words, Roger.
Sarah, what do you think?
I think I'm also fine where he's at. I mean, I really don't like him because I feel like I guess like no matter what he's experienced, it's a parent's job to like protect their children, so he has no excuse to be acting that way, I guess. So
yeah. He kind of brings their house to ruin too, which affects speaking less personally, but it affects a lot of other people's jobs and livelihoods. But yeah, I don't think he's like, my plan is to, you know, get as much as I can out of this world. He's not a Sadeas necessarily. So, Roger, I know you love Navani, and after seeing some flashbacks with her and Gavalar, and also with the mysteries behind Gavalar, he's going to be our next one. And where would you put him?
Where would I put Gavalar?
Yeah, that's the question.
I mean, I don't really think of him on a villain scale currently. He's kind of like I don't know, because he definitely had a lot of information and was doing things that he shouldn't have been doing with like the anti-void light spheres or whatever he was doing, some like weird experimental stuff in the background. So he's like on one hand almost like evil scientist vibes, but like I don't know, maybe C ahead of Eli for me.
Okay. I get the impression that he wanted to be very powerful and he was doing some very shady things to try and attain that. It just didn't quite work the way maybe he was planning. Sophia, what do you think?
So you're saying he tried, but I think he if he hadn't have come into contact with Seth, shall we say, he may have ended up higher up on the list. But I don't think he's a good guy, but I don't know whether he's like truly evil at the point that we got him. So yeah, I'd probably put him in the sea, at the top of sea.
Okay. He's ahead of Eli.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I like how everything comes down to like, how do they compare to Ela or Eli, however you want to say it.
Well, she's like our benchmark for the lower tiers.
That's
so
true.
Odium is our benchmark for the mid. And I feel like Moash is kind of our benchmark for the upper.
I think it's because Gavalar was bad on his own, whereas Ela was only bad with assistance.
Sarah, what do you think?
Bad with assistance.
Having recently read the prologue to Rhythm of War, I strongly don't like him. And I think there is still like a fair amount of mystery around him, but so that makes me intrigued. But I also really don't like him, so I'm like, I kind of feel good with the position that he's in, because it's like, I don't know, I feel conflicted about him.
Hey, I might actually put him higher. I might put him in B, because I think that we see him through so many of our other characters as he's Dalinar's brother who Dalinar failed to protect, or he was like Yasna's father who was gone too soon. You see him in that way. But if you think about the people of this entire basically planet, his whole thing was like, oh, I'm going to conquer a lot of people and I'm going to have my brother be the weapon that I use for this. So I feel like he is actually like quietly a really terrible person. And he just had sort of like, I think is bad in a similar way to Amaram in a sense, but you just don't have any perspective that actually looks at him that way. Because Amaram also has this like, oh, well, sure, if you want to call me honorable, call me honorable. It's just, it looks like Gavalar was a good person because he's like, we have to unite everybody. But he still was perfectly fine launching campaigns of, slaughter, essentially. So I feel like I might put him in B, but I'm not going to object too hard if the rest of you disagree with that. Jesse, did you?
Those people that like, as we get more information, it might change, but with what I have so far.
So I think I'm more with L. I would put him higher. I would put him in B for sure, because while we might not know more, he does have that potential. And I think also because, like you, Sarah, I am halfway through Rhythm of War right now, and I've read that first half in like 3 days. Like I am flying through it.
Yeah, but he's not Lord Ruler Odium or abuser of his children.
But he pretty much set everything in motion, though.
But we're giving him the benefit of that by putting him at the top of C already. So like he's already getting that acknowledgement.
Set it all in motion, and he's like, again, he's terrible to his children.
He was also getting manipulated by Odium, OG, and then like there's a whole lot of other stuff going on. He's not the one who set everything in motion.
He's also terrible to Yasna.
I still feel like nobody's
gonna marry Amaram.
Nobody's acknowledging what I said, that he led armies.
He literally is the reason that Dalinar and Sadas, he's like, nah, go kill these
Kaladin leads armies too and kills a lot of people.
I mean, they're not conquering.
Okay, he's not like, let's go conquer some people. Nice try, Roger.
Well, you said he leads armies, so I was like, well, I mean, lots of people lead armies.
Innocent people. He launches campaigns under this like prestigious, like, oh, we're uniting the world, and you're like, yeah, says the conqueror. Like I just feel like it's not. But again, I don't think he's. I don't hate him like the characters that we have in S and A, and I wouldn't put him way at the top of B by any means. I just might put him in B.
Bottom of B.
Yeah, I'd be cool with bottom of B.
Bottom of B. That's where I would go too, because like maybe top of C, but and I think though, as we read more Stormlight,
I think there's potential as well.
Do we know who the flashback in Wind and Truth is from? Is it Gavalar?
I thought it was Zeth.
I thought it was that.
No, that's for the whole book. But I mean, like
the prologue. I don't know.
I can't say because I can only talk about spoilers because I've read the prologue, so I can't. I feel like I can't say.
Okay.
Because I don't want to spoil that for anybody who's trying to avoid hearing about any of that stuff. But Anyway, so are we in agreement that it's okay to be bottom of beer or beer? That didn't make any sense. Bottom of B, or are we like, no, he should be top of C?
I'm okay with
I
either.
like top of C.
You like top of Roger? I'm sticking my heels in the ground. Okay, wait. So I'm voting B. Roger says C. Jesse, you said bottom of B.
Yeah, but I'm okay with top
Okay,
of C.
Okay, Sophia, what would your vote be?
Either is fine with me.
Okay, so abstains. And then Sarah, what would your vote be?
I originally said top of C, but I agree with bottom of B now.
Sorry, Roger, you got voted out. But hey, I got voted out with D-Loft, so. All right. Sarah, who do you hate that we haven't talked about? Or who's a character that you're like, that's a great villain, even if you don't hate them?
Is Taravangian on there?
Yeah, he's here.
Sarah Vangian?
Natural.
Yes, Sarah Venture.
I would put him in S tier because I think he is so interesting, and like everything about him, I am always excited to read more about him. I love him.
I get so sad every time he's dumb and cries, though. I'm always like, oh man. I mean, I have a weird, like, my kryptonite is when it comes to people who have done bad things, once they get old and frail and like cry easily because they don't even like have the mental capacity to recognize, I'm always like, geez, like I don't know what it is. I'm just like, you're old though. I think Taravangian kind of fits that in a lot of ways. Sophia, what do you think?
I think he's S as well, but I think for very different reasons to Sadus and Straff, because he's awful, but also I do just want to like grab him and give him a big hug and be like, it's gonna be okay.
Yeah, I know, it's weird. It's very conflicting feelings. But also, is it even like the same person from day to day, you know? Like,
no, this is it.
I do wonder though.
I think. Sorry, go on.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, because we still don't know exactly. So I'm like, is he secretly like actually saving the world? You know what I mean? Because maybe he is in a way like a more successful Lord Ruler type. But maybe, I don't know, maybe it's not. It's just, it seems like his plan of what is it called? What's the like
the
diagram?
The diagram.
The diagram. Yeah, we don't know all that it entails. So it's just hard to believe because he does have blind spots when it comes to the diagram. It's hard to believe that this path that he decided to go on when he was mean and stupid and was like, kill those singing kids. It's like hard to know what I just don't think that could be the only way, even if that path that the diagram lays out leads ultimately to like saving everybody. It's like you killed a lot of people to get there and you did like weird experiments and stuff too. So, but I'm in agreement that I think he's an S tier. I just don't know where in S tier I would place him. What do you think, Jesse?
Yeah. He's definitely an S tier. But I'm not sure where either. Like, because I don't have the same visceral hate I do for the others.
I almost think him not having hate and us all being, except for Roger, of course, I'll let you talk in a second, but us all agreeing pretty much like, oh, for sure S tier, but I don't hate him, makes him, to me, have maybe top of S tier because that's a hard thing to accomplish. Like, you don't hate them, but you think they're a fantastic, like one of the best villains. I think that's a very difficult thing to accomplish. And he still does bad things. It's not like he just like happens to fall into the role of villain on accident. So I might put him at top, even though I don't hate him. Roger, what do you think?
I was going to say, I think he's the top of S because he's the most successful villain that we have. I mean, he attained godhood and is now going to do who knows what. So I think he's the most interesting. he's not the most visceral villain, but he's arguably more interesting because of it. And I think Brandon did a good job of like playing the poor elderly frail person against us, because we're like, oh, I mean, but like
Yes, completely agree.
I was genuinely sad when it turned out he was a bad guy. I was like, no, but
right.
I know.
But then he also has like a hospital where he just keeps people there to like listen to them die for the off chance that they'll say something interesting. Like he does some pretty messed up things.
Right.
Well, and he does kind of like in the background lead to the complete collapse of nations, basically, you know? Like
just like sabotaging it in the background.
You guys want me to come in and help? Okay, sure. And like playing up I didn't even have any. It's so sad what happened here. Yeah, he's great. I'm glad that we all are like, okay.
We agree about something.
Yay!
We've agreed about most things.
We've agreed about a lot.
Very minor placement differences.
Like Deloff, the fact that created probably the biggest disagreement is funny to me. The character that half of us don't even remember. Okay, I feel like we gotta do some Mistborn Era 2 villains. They're not the best, I'm not gonna lie. I was asking myself, I'm like, I know that Wax's like uncle's bad, but who else is bad again? Like I couldn't really remember, which isn't the best sign. But we'll start with there's a couple different ways to refer to him. Edwarn Ladrian. I think. Yeah, Edwarn. And then Mr. Suit also. I'm kind of like, I'm fine with C, honestly. I mean, B I'd be okay with as well, but I'm just like, I don't even like remember him very well. So I feel like I can't put him very high. But Sophia, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think he's a very kind of lackluster. And really, he's just a lackey at the end of the day. So, yeah.
Couldn't even find a picture of him.
Oh, I'm not surprised.
I just have the graphic audio image of Wax and the other characters. I'm just placing him here for now, and then if anybody wants him to move, I'm fine with it. But Jesse, what do you think?
Yeah, I think he's kind of meh. Like you said, he does end up basically he's just a lackey. Like he's not like the brains behind it. He's not. And I did also kind of forget about pretty much every Mistborn Era 2 villain as
the
well.
Memorability.
They're not memorable. There's a couple that are like, oh yeah, but like he's not even one of those.
Yeah. Roger, what do you think?
I'd say C or D. I feel like a lot of the villains in Mistborn Era 2 are just there to give you more Cosmere exposition, which is why I liked the series. But overall, the villains themselves are kind of cartoony.
Mm-hmm. And Sarah, what do you think?
I don't remember him either.
I've read it twice, except for the last one. I've only read it once. And I'm like, oh yeah.
I've also read Mistborn Era 2 twice, and I'm like, I don't remember what he did. So for that reason, I put him in D because he's unmemorable.
Are we cool with him? Are we cool with him being top of D, or do we want him to be lower?
I think Hrathen and Deloff are more interesting.
Yeah, they're better.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not opposed to this. Okay, actually, one of the most interesting, if not the most interesting, in my opinion, villain of Mistborn Era 2 is Lessie, because she does in a way become a villain. Because it's very detective, investigative, and that is sort of the bad guy of that particular investigation. And then when you find out that twist, I feel like that's one of the best twists, like of all the it's like probably my favorite thing about Mistborn Era 2 is you're like, that's so devastating. So I would put maybe at least in B, I think, for the interesting factor and the devastation, the personal connection to it all. I think it's really tragic and really different from a lot of the other villains. But Sarah, what do you think?
I agree that it's like the twist that is like the one thing about Era 2 that like sticks out to me whenever I think about it. So I do find her very interesting. I would maybe put her above Shallan's dad.
Oh, okay. For the interesting factor?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll put her there for now. And then we'll see Everybody else says Roger. What do you think?
I don't have strong feelings about her one way or the other.
Okay. Jesse, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm good with her in B. Probably above Shalon's dad. But that twist hurt. I do remember that twist was heartbreaking.
One of the most unique. I think the unique factor, same as obviously none of us feel she's like as good of a villain as Taravangian, but that interesting edge, I think, is what makes her. I'm okay with that placement. If Sophia, if you decide you think it should be a little lower, I wouldn't object. But what do you think?
I'm quite conflicted with her because I think ultimately I don't think she ever has the intention necessarily to be evil. I think that she's just lost her mind, and that's happened to her. So I feel kind of almost bad categorizing her as evil, because I don't think that, it's not like with Amaram or Straff or anything where, they're intentionally being terrible people. I think with her, it's just like she's lost her grasp on reality, which, I mean, when you've lived for as long as that, fair. So
I agree. I also wouldn't categorize her as evil either.
No, because isn't like her main motivation kind of like she free them from what she sees, like free the humans from what she sees as like evil harmony.
Well, isn't it because because Phase It at this point as harmony kind of doesn't allow it's almost like a debate of free will.
Yeah.
And she's like in a sense has it now, but you're like, does she though? It's
but does she? Yeah.
It's really well done. It's my favorite part of Mistborn era too, but it is also very sad. So you're cool with that placement though, Sophia?
Yeah, just on the proviso that I'm not saying that she's there because she's really bad. I'm saying she's there because it's like it is really, really well done. But I feel sorry for her.
Oh yeah.
You know what's kind of interesting is that you said that you feel she is probably one of the characters you're the most conflicted about, and she's right in the middle right now with how we have everything laid out. So I think that kind of fits. Okay, let's do the sorceress from Tress of the Emerald Sea, whose name is Rina, who I know is like, a little more Cosmere tied, but I'm like, I don't know.
Forgot about her. I did not even include this in my what I thought would be like, oh, who are we gonna include? Like when we're thinking about it, what a thought in my brain.
I mean, she works for that story because that story is kind of like silly, building off of the Princess Bride feeling. So it's building off of the the camp factor. So she works for the story, but I'm like, I still have to reference my notes to be like, what's her name again? So I'm fine with her being in D.
Yeah.
I honestly am fine with her being like bottom of D, but
I think the thing I remember most about her is her spaceship was weird.
You would put her ahead of, were you going to say?
Edwarn. Just because I think she's a little bit more active than I mean, Edwarn, what does Edwarn do? I don't know.
Sarah and Roger, do you have thoughts? Or you're like, that's fine?
I think that's fair. I mean, like, I love Tress, but like, if we're ranking her, okay, cat. If we're ranking her as like against all the other villains in the Cosmere, I think that's a fair place to put her behind Hrathen. Yeah,
I agree.
So you agree? Okay. All right, Rashon. I feel like, I mean, I hated Rashon for a long time. I think for a long time I would put him like bottom of A, but then I think about Rashon later. I'm like, he kind of just becomes like sad. And to use Sarah's word from the beginning of this chat, he becomes kind of pathetic. He always was, I think. He was pathetic, but he had some power over people. But I mean, I hate him. So I'm fine with A, but if other people object, I will accept that. What do you think, Sarah?
For me, he's not, well, I do also hate him, but he's not like super memorable for me. Like when I think of characters, when I think of characters in Stormlight that I hate, like he's not the first one that comes to my mind. And he is just kind of pathetic also.
So you would put him
maybe top of B.
Okay. Roger.
I think bottom of A is a good place for him. He's a more personal villain, but I think he's a more realistic one that we probably have all met somebody like that who's like in a position of authority and just kind of uses it for their benefit. And they're not necessarily like murdering people, but like
yeah, but their actions result in very bad things. I mean, it was pretty much his actions and his vendetta against Kaladin's dad that led to Kaladin's brother dying.
Uh-huh.
So
just
and
for
like
petty because he's a petty piece
yes.
of crap. Yeah.
Yes. And it's like the pettiness really it's and also I love Kaladin and like his little brother didn't deserve what happened. So there's a part of me that's very angry about it. Jesse, what do you think?
I agree. I mean that one moment where Kaladin just finally just like decks him was very fist pump. Very satisfying. I don't think he's as bad as like, you know, like Moash Amaram. Like he doesn't deserve to be there, but he's pretty high up, bottom of A, top of B, probably for me.
Okay, I'll put him here for now because I'm feeling some like we don't quite hate him as much. He also matches the aesthetic of B right now. Like his little art looks like it. Sophia, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that he's kind of like there with Moash and Amaram. So all the ones that mess with Kaladin were just like absolutely not acceptable behavior. Absolutely not acceptable. But I agree. It's like he was always pathetic, but even like more so towards the end, and like the way that his wife has to like deal with everything for him because he's just that useless. A little bit of poetic justice there, I feel like. So yeah, I'm fine with bottom of A, top of B. He's terrible, but
even though I'm the one that initially was like, I think he goes in A, I'm also looking at it, I'm like, oh, but does he? Like there's a part of me that's like, is he lower in B? But we don't need to, unless you guys want to, I don't think we need to debate if he belongs. I think it's just I don't think he's as bad.
Is he a bad guy?
I don't think he's actually as bad as pretty much anyone else in this tier. It's just that I'm like, dude, I hate this guy.
Yeah.
And as you guys were saying, he's realistic. So
yeah, it's that
but he's the kind
level.
He's the kind of character that leads to the Moashes of their world. Even though obviously Elakar is kind of the one, but Elakar is just like kind of stupid and not the best at ruling, even though he tries. But Rashon, it's like I know, but Rashon, it was. I feel like he knew what he was doing, especially when his own son died in that like hunting accident. So to him,
well, the whole thing was like his temper tantrum, right? Because he got sent there, he didn't want to be there. So screw these peasants, like
okay.
Vindictive.
Bluefingers from Warbreaker. I feel like it's a better twist than the Deloff thing. And he is a better villain overall, but he's also not the most memorable. So I might put him at top of C. What do we think? Do we all remember Bluefingers?
Mm-hmm.
Sarah, no.
Sarah does not. Sarah's like,
Sarah, have you read any Cosmere books?
Sarah doesn't read for the villains.
This has also been one that I haven't read in like 6 years, so
yeah, that's fair. I'm gonna put him where I already declared, but also if anybody's like, no, I think he deserves to be lower or higher, then we can discuss. But I'll just throw this out there. Are we cool with top of C?
Yeah, because I feel like he's not the first one you think of, is he, when you think about Warbreaker villains?
Right.
Like he's there, but you know.
Okay, another debate, kind of like the Kelsier one. Dalinar.
Oh.
That one's hard.
Well, no, but I think
we can't ask Evie or the people of that entire place because.
But I think that there are two characters there. There's Dalinar and there's the Blackthorn.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're totally different.
I would definitely agree with you there. I would say, like, if we were just saying the Blackthorn, I feel like he'd be much higher.
We can call it that.
If we're
we can say the
going
Blackthorn.
Current Dalinar, who's trying to make up for everything and accept what he's done, Maybe a little lower.
So sober Dalinar.
Sober Dalinar.
Drunk
Let's
Dalinar.
categorize him. Let's think of him as the Blackthorn. If we think of him just as that, where would we place him?
If we think young Dalinar just as the Blackthorn, I think he could go in A.
I think he could go in A.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's reckless. He is pretty stupid, to be honest. He isn't the best husband. He's not good to his kids. He's just doesn't think through anything, really. He has like one decent moment when he spares that kid, but then later it's very much like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. And then, a bunch of people have to pay the price for it. He's like a worse version of Rashon in a sense, because Rashon was just like, I'm gonna send your son or whatever, and then Dalinar's like, I'm gonna destroy this entire place. So he had unchecked rage, I think. But also there's the whole idea of like, but is he being influenced by Odium?
Yeah.
Because you're like,
I was thinking that.
But then there's also part of me that's like, are a lot of people in Stormlight though?
Yeah.
So just the Blackthorn, we have a vote for bottom of A. Sophia, where would you place him?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think
Roger,
he'd put himself there.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
You think he would?
I mean, I don't have feelings about him anywhere near as deep as Moash and Amaram, so I'm surprised that you guys all of a sudden want to put him in A, because it's hard to divorce what we know of Dalinar from like some snippets of his backstory that were admittedly horrific. Like he did commit war crimes, but I don't have the same visceral feelings for him. There was never times on page where I was like, oh, I hate this man so much. It was like, oh, okay, well, he's done a lot of really messed up things, and it makes you think about Dalinar in a different way. But like, if we're talking about villainy, he was also influenced by Gavalar. So like Gavalar was the one using him and sending him around. So was he really a villain of his own?
I think he could have very easily actually, like, I think he had the ability to have agency and he chose not to because it was like easier to just do what his brother said and think like, oh, well, Gavalar's like the thinker, so I'm just going to be the Blackthorn. And I think weirdly for me, and this is going to be different from person to person, on reread, I like Dalinar a lot less. Not that I think he's a poorly written character. I think he's a well-written character. But part of what was hard for me about Oathbringer is I'm like, when I think about it, you like the whole like you cannot have my pain is such a great line, but also like a lot of people died because of you. A lot of people died and horrifically. And it just makes me, I'm like, yeah, you should probably spend the rest of your life doing what you can to make up for it. It doesn't make him honorable to me. I'm like, no, that's what you should do in a way. So
I'd still put him
think
in
like
B. I mean, I don't have any visceral feelings
B.
for him like I'd have for Moash or Amaram anywhere near.
Yeah. Sarah, what do you think?
Well, it's interesting that you said that you liked him less on reread, because I actually, like, when you said that, I was like, oh, wait, I think I actually feel like that too. I hadn't like thought about it, but I think I agree. Like the thing for me that's like preventing me from really agreeing with him being an A is like I don't feel like he was like doing things to be villainous. Like he was just kind of being stupid and just following things. So for me, I think that would be top of B rather than bottom of A.
Okay. So we have 3 for bottom of A and 2 for top of B, right? He might be one we revisit at the end. We can like leave him there. I will admit, I hate reckless characters, which is 100%. He was reckless when he was young.
Oh, yeah.
Reckless characters to me, I'm just like, there's so many, I think real human beings that in our, like we know people who have gotten away with being reckless. And you're like, yeah, that doesn't, just because you didn't think through your actions doesn't like give you a pass. You should think through your actions. Maybe don't drink so much too. That would help. So I think I also
maybe
have
find
those
a 12 step.
Okay, so Ruin from Mistborn. I don't know. I don't hate Ruin because again, it's sort of like, I mean, you are control, like that is you are compelled to do this because of the shard.
Yeah, so, and like Ruin kind of just, it's, I don't know, I always think of it like it's kind of just like that force of nature. Like it can't fight against its own nature. it is ruin and it needs balance with preservation. So it's not like out there just doing to be bad. It just kind of is. I don't know.
But it made, I think he succeeded in making that interesting.
Yeah.
And really having negative consequences. But it's not like compelling in the same way that some of the other, like he's not Sadus, you know what I mean? Sophia, what do you think of Ruin?
Yeah, I think there's an interesting kind of distinction there between AT and Ruin. But I do think that character overall is really clever and really interesting. So I'd be tempted to put him higher just because of the way that he's written and the way that everything plays out, the way that he's kind of had these machinations in the background all along that we didn't really know about.
Are you okay with I for guess, now? Sorry, go ahead. I just was saying for now I put him top of B. Is that probably where you'd place him?
Yeah, that's good. I think he's just a very successful villain.
Jesse, is that kind of what you're thinking too?
That's kind of what I'm thinking. He is, like you said, he is very successful as a villain.
Roger, what do you think?
I mean, he's very similar to Odium, so I might put him more towards the middle of B, kind of with Lord Ruler and Odium, but like anywhere in B is kind of fine.
Do you think above Lord Ruler?
That's fine. I mean, that seems to be the consensus between everybody. I definitely dislike Rashawn more than I dislike him.
Yeah, I like that Rashawn's like apocalyptic, oppressive leader. Maybe also apocalyptic.
Mean to Kaladin. Like
yeah, exactly. Are you
our level
mean to Kaladin? Yeah.
I feel like that has become our grading scale. How mean are they to Kaladin?
That's really what it, yeah. Sarah, is that cool with you, that placement?
Yeah, I think that placement is good.
Yeah. Okay. We have a couple of we have another Mistborn Era 2 villain. We have Miles, who I think was cool. I think that they're also more memorable than Suit, than Edwarn, and their way of manipulating their magic system is awesome.
Yeah.
But I think it's like, I mean, I would put them in probably C because I'm not like, I hate that guy. It's just like, dude, how do we kill them? You know what I mean? It's one of those characters. And I think if it were some kind of animated show, they would be a really cool villain to see on screen. Even the artwork for them is really cool. But I don't know if I don't like hate them. So I might put them maybe ahead of Ela, but not ahead of Bluefingers because they're not like pulling the strings and calling the shots. But I'm also open for other people's thoughts here on where they would place him. Sarah, what do you think?
The only thing I remember about him is his powers, which are very cool. I'm pretty good with where he is at right now.
Wasn't he also somebody who used to work with Wax?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They were,
so there's like a little
allies out in the rough.
Yeah. Sophia, where would you place him?
Yeah, that looks good to me. I think I quite like the scene where he ends up being defeated. I enjoy that.
Yeah, with the bubble, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Roger, what do you think?
I think that's fair. For Mr. 100 Lives, he can be right there above Eli.
I kind of forgot about him. I forgot who he was for a minute there until you were like, I was like, oh yeah, he's that guy. His his defeat scene was super interesting, but I mean, I did kind of forget about him. So we're just
this
cool
next
wherever
one,
he lands.
This next one I might get some pushback for, which is totally fine. But Jasis from Mistborn, who is the one that leads the Koloss to Luthadel, and also the one that Ellen ends up cutting his head off. I hated him, and Sarah, your word of the day, pathetic. He's the most pathetic.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm just kind of like, and he succeeds in accidentally, but also it was because of his own dumb actions. I mean, that Koloss army goes wild and hurts a lot of people. So I'm like, might be top of B for me. I I hate Jasis. I think he's such a loser. And he's like a loser who failed up, you know, where you're like, dang it. So I would put him there. I don't know that I think Rashon I have more of a personal hatred for, but Rashon is not as responsible for the deaths of as many people as Jasis. And Jasis is just so stupid. And you can like tell that he thinks that he's doing the right thing. And you're like, you idiot. So that's where I would place him. But I don't know if everybody else hates Jasis as much as I do. Sarah, what do you think?
I don't remember him at all, so no.
Sarah! He's like that, like, slimy, dumb. He's like, no, I have control over them. Where you're like, no, you don't. That's his name, right? I didn't get his name wrong?
Yeah.
That's his name, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Sophia, what do you think?
I don't think he deserves the credit of going as high as that. I'd put him in D tier.
Okay.
He's just so pathetic and useless.
D? Did you say D?
Yeah.
Oh,
think,
no.
Like, he doesn't do anything and he just bumbles along and mucks stuff up. And, like, I think he's just...
I just feel like if he was on the screen, I'd be like, this freaking guy. You know, I think I'd be pissed off every time. And I'm like, dude, are you serious? Because so many people die because some of our heroes die because of him. And I'm just like, it's kind of ironic. It wasn't Straff in the end it wasn't Set's army. It was stupid Jastis' army because he saw an opportunity and tried to take it like an idiot. But I understand what you're
not
saying.
because he was trying to do anything, just because he's just so stupid.
I'm going to put him here, and then we'll see what Jesse and Roger have to say. Jesse, what do you think?
I mean, I don't think I'd put him as high as you. But
Fair.
Wasn't he friends with Ellen at one point?
Yeah.
Like, that kind of... we know how we feel about friend betrayal. Obviously, based on some of our others, they've pretty much has been... you betray your friends, you're going at S tier at this point. But he's not
dumber Moash.
He's dumb Moash. Dumber Moash. I like that. But he's also not as memorable to me. So I'd probably go top of C.
Okay. And then Roger, are you gonna break my heart and be like, I don't like this guy as a villain, so D tier?
I think C is acceptable. I mean, but he's also not actively trying to be a villain. He just bumbles his way into it, being a moron.
Yeah.
So, like, it's not really like he's successful in his plans and all of that stuff, like Taravangian, where he's like this crazy, incredible, manipulative person. So, like, body count alone, I don't think bumps him up, because otherwise Lord Ruler also killed lots of people. Like,
right. The Lord Ruler was like trying. Well, yeah. I feel like Lord Ruler's not like as stupid as I think it's fair to put Bluefingers above him because Bluefingers was like more actively villainous. Yeah, and Jasis was just dumb. So, okay, and then Raboniel, there's a lot of different ways I feel like I've heard people say her name. She's one of the coolest. And you're also like, is she? I don't know if she's bad though. You know, like she's one of those where you're like, it's actually really cool. Her and Navani create stuff together. So, but she's like so successful too when she takes the tower, and she's like compelling. She's super sad backstory, or like not. I don't know if we want to call it backstory, but her motivations. You're like, no, that's sad. So I weirdly want to put her up really high, because she's like so well written, but also if we're thinking as like a villain, even though she does end up being an antagonistic force in Rhythm of War, she's not necessarily like pure evil or anything. So I don't know. I think it's a little up for debate for me. But Sarah, you're in the middle of your reread right now. So what would you say?
I also think she's super interesting. And like every time she's on the page, I'm like, I just want to know more. But I agree that I don't think she's like evil necessarily. So I definitely.
But you guys put the Blackthorn up there. He's not evil necessarily either. So like,
I said top
criteria is very wishy-washy.
I think our rating
This
scale
whole
is
okay.
so much.
No,
it's
I mean,
fantastic. I love it.
But we knew that was going to happen. And also, I don't think a lot of them are based off of pure evil. Moash, I think, is a perfect example of he's not evil. He's just trying to avenge his family and try to bring a flawed system down, which is like, depending on the arc, it's admirable. But in his instance, it's like gone too far, and like he's actually working against the very things he's trying to accomplish. But we're not talking about Blackthorn. We're talking about Bonio right now. So, Sarah, where would you? I think from like the cool factor, interesting, but still ultimately like on the other side in a way. She's like high up for me, but she's not like, I don't hate her at all.
I agree with that.
And then also, Jesse, because you're also in your reread, what would you say for her?
I'd say she's pretty high up. A tier, but like I don't hate her. I love her. I love her and Navani's interactions, and like, yes, she's the antagonist. Yes, she took the tower, but like you can also kind of see her motivations behind a little bit. And then she has that moment with, is it her daughter?
Mm-hmm.
Just that moment right there. But it's like she's not evil, but she's not good. But I love her, so I would put her in A for sure.
She's weirdly like the most, is it weird to say, lovable of all of them?
She's the most lovable villain in the world.
Which is like why,
because she has Taravangian.
Well, I was gonna say she has that similar, like, as Taravangian does, of the, you have that edge over Sadus and Straff because I don't hate you, but yet you're so good at what you're doing. And I feel that there's a similar factor to her. She's just not nearly as successful. But Sophia, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. She's super interesting character, and her motivations are so understandable, and she's really interesting to read about. I really like her, but also she is, not doing the best things. Not the nicest. Not the nicest person. So yeah, I'm comfortable with where she is.
Roger, what do you think?
I think she belongs above the Blackthorn. She's a better villain than him.
I wouldn't object necessarily. I mean, I'm okay. I think I might not necessarily 100% agree with that, but I also don't mind because I like her so much that I'm like, yeah, she's so cool. So I'm cool with that. Is everybody else cool with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And then Denth from Warbreaker. I feel the problem with Denth is that if we get like some kind of backstory book, maybe would be a lot more interesting to me. But currently I'm just kind of like, they're on the lower end. What do you think, Sophia?
I'm still so sad that he turned out to be a bad guy because I really liked him and Tongfa. Like, they really remind me of this couple of characters in the Poison Study series that I really enjoy. And yeah, I'm kind of gutted that he's bad.
Where would you place him?
I'd say probably C. Probably
maybe
above ELA. Yeah.
Do you think above Miles?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. Roger, what do you think?
I think that's a fair placement for him.
Cool. Jesse.
I do. I think it's a good placement for him. I was like you, I was very sad when we found out he was actually a villain. And you're like, oh. But again, also still not like, oh my god, he's super memorable. Like, I either love him or hate him. Like, there's no strong feelings either way.
Yeah, and I actually wasn't that surprised because the whole time I was like, I don't know, I kind of feel like something's up.
I mean, he kind of told us.
Yeah.
Kind of told on himself.
Sarah, you cool with that placement?
She doesn't remember who he is.
She doesn't remember him.
So, a reminder in Warbreaker, when Movena launches her very unsuccessful rescue mission of her sister, they're her like contacts, basically, that are helping her supposedly, and then it turns out they've just been using her this whole time. And it turns out that he has a history with Vasher. So that's why I say like he could be way more interesting if we knew a little more about him. But as it stands, I kind of feel like he's just fine, you know. Okay, Zeth. Oh, were you gonna say something? I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say I feel good about that placement then.
Okay, Zeth. I kind of want to put Zeth in A tier for the same reasons we put Raboniel in A tier, where you're like, they're mysterious and you feel for them and you know there's more about them, there's more to them. They're also really good at what they do. They're such a, like, they're so threatening, but they're also, the way that they're written, the imagery and the description of them, they don't look how you would envision this terrifying force to look. I think they're so cool. So I, for like the cool factor alone, but also they do present a problem. The fights between him and Kaladin are always so good. So I kind of want to put him in A, but I don't think he's like, he himself is conflicted. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't want to do what he's doing. So I would probably put him in A, but also I open this to the floor. Roger, where would you put Zeth?
I think right behind Raboniel. Because I think he is a really fun villain, and I think the cinematicness of his fights with Kaladin are just so good. And like, yeah, he doesn't want to do it, and then there's like the whole reveal about like all of that nonsense. But it's like, I don't know, he's still so good.
He's kind of another example of he's not the one pulling the strings. But his reasons for why he obeys they seem very deeply tragic. Sophia, what do you think?
I feel like I'm reserving judgment on Seth because I'm not at all convinced that he is a villain. I think,
right.
But he definitely was for at least the first two Stormlight.
Yeah, and I think he's in a lot of I think there's a lot of misjudgment that's gone on there, and he's like a victim of circumstance. So I'm really, really interested to see his backstory for sure. So I'm fine with him there, but I think that might drastically change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it will drastically change after Wind and Truth.
Yeah, I agree. I think that as well. I think we're gonna be like, oh, Zeth, he's like the hero of the story. You know, I think we're all gonna be totally loving him.
Yeah.
Jesse, are you in agreement?
I am, but we also kind of feel like that about Dalinar. We like him a lot more as not the Blackthorn. And like Roger said, we put him pretty high. So I definitely agree with where Seth is. And I love a good redemption arc if they deserve it.
Do you think for Sophia and Jesse, you both, do you think the placement right exactly where he is good, or would you put him above Raboniel?
No, I like Raboniel more.
Yeah.
As a
whole character. As an antagonist.
Okay.
A whole character.
She's like, I like
too
her
many
face,
questions
her
about
hair,
her.
everything is better.
Everything. Her interactions with Navani.
Sarah, you definitely know who this is.
Yay!
If you turned around and said, I can't remember who Seth is, we'd all just be like, kick Sarah out, right?
Oh my god.
I feel bad. I feel we've kind of picked on you a little bit, but that's the thing. Some of these characters are not the most memorable, so I think that you brought that in, you know.
And I said earlier that I'm having one of my dumb Taravangian days, so
Just staying on brand.
Yes.
Maybe like sometime next week you would be able to tell us everything about all these characters.
Yes. Yesterday when I came up with the Taravangian pun, I would have been able to. I think I would maybe put him above Raboniel just because as a character, maybe not as a villain. Because I think that like he's so interesting, and also I do want to like learn a lot more about him, but I do think it's interesting to have him go from like in the first book being like this kind of threat to like then getting a whole book like about his backstory. Like I think that is a really interesting progression throughout the first like these 5 books. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think I might put him above Raboniel, but it seems like so Jesse for sure says Raboniel's higher. Roger, you wanted Raboniel higher, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think Sophia, but also, Sarah, the way you said it is like as a character overall, but as a villain, maybe I think where he's at is, and again, villain is a little bit not always the most accurate way to describe these characters, but they do present in some fashion some sort of antagonistic. They go up against our heroes or the causes and things like that. And I know there are others that we could have included
except
that we
for
didn't.
The Blackthorn does not go up against our heroes.
True, just a lot of innocent people. Like Evie, and also not good to his sons.
Well, and yeah, I was about to say he's not really great to his kids, who are characters.
Yeah, that's true. Roger's like, I don't like that. I got.
I don't agree that he's a villainous force in the Cosmere in any fashion.
Yeah.
So,
I totally disagree. I think that the amount of people that he killed, I think, puts him, and not for a good cause. He didn't kill people for any means of good. I mean, feels like an oxymoron, but it's not like he was defending. He was a lot of times just like killing people because he has a huge amount of power and skill, and
yeah, but if we're being with that kind of justification, then Roboniel is kind of justified in what she's doing because they are the colonizers of her people. So is she really a villain?
I don't know that she's up that high because she's a villain, even. I think it's just because she's so interesting as a character and so well done.
But it's a villain tier list, Sophie. No kidding. I'm just being annoying.
That's why I added the sort of asterisk of not all of these characters necessarily might fall like comfortably under villain, but they have presented, at the very least, they've done some pretty terrible things. So I think a lot of Dalinar's actions were upholding the very things that Sadus ends up being like in their culture. There's a reason that Sadus was praised and Dalinar was praised when he was the Blackthorn for a long time. And it's like, Sadus wasn't a hero back then either. It's just, but I think what you said, like, he's not necessarily bad to our characters on a personal level like Roshone is. I still think as the Blackthorn, he was like a bad person. I don't think he had many redeeming qualities. But he might be, it would seem, a big takeaway, Dalinar, most controversial. The Blackthorn, I'll specifically call him the Blackthorn, most controversial character on this list, perhaps for us here, us five, but it'll be interesting if there are others that are highly debated. But that's our tier ranking. So we know, Roger, that would be your number one. Like, if we were to have some kind of veto, you would want him in a different place. Sarah, where would you say is your most, like, I pretty strongly disagree spot?
I don't know if I have any.
Yeah, you're pretty chill.
You'd have to remember half of them.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I remember I would.
Jesse, what about for you? Do you have any that you're like, I really didn't like that placement?
I don't know if I strongly disagree, but like, I don't know. The Lord Ruler for me still, I feel like, but not based on evilness, based on memorableness for me. I just really like him.
Yeah.
So
I do.
Like,
I still feel a little
for me as a character.
Feel a little weird about Roshone being like top of B when I see who else is in B, but I'm like, I really hate Roshone though.
Yeah, but, we just really there's lots of
and then Sophia, where would you say is your biggest disagreement?
Jastis, I'd put him lower just because
I was gonna say I think Jastis is my biggest disagreement for the other reason that I would put him higher because I hate him so much. That's it though for our tier ranking. Obviously not full agreement all around, but these are the compromises that we came to, and this is our list. And then in the same way that we all have our specific ones that maybe we disagree with, if anybody wants to say in the comments what they disagree with the most, feel free to do so. And I know we didn't list every antagonistic like being within the Cosmere, so if you want to add in some others and where you'd place them, feel free. A reminder to check out merch for World Hoppers, as all of the profits go to charity. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you later. Bye.